High vacancy rates in the public sector have resulted in more workers doing overtime work. More concerning is that overtime pay has become part of many officials' lifestyles now. This has caused dependency, with some depending on the income generated through overtime work. Our economics reporter, in fact editor, Tshepo Mongoai has been looking at this issue, and particularly as the fiscus is currently under strain. You talk about overtime pay and a lot of people start really having, their ears raised. But Tshepo, this is one of those things that is a huge, huge issue in many companies. But how is it a threat, particularly when we look at the fiscus?
Well, it's a serious one. For the longest time, we know that the Basic Condition of Employment Act has actually been trying to bring more clarity. Government sending a lot of circulars to departments to actually find ways in which this can be curbed, because there's been a lot of abuse. But what is even more surprising is that the claim for overtime pay is still continue to increase. Although, there isn't a figure out there, you just get a snippets of here and there in terms of the increase in overtime in municipalities. The situation is even worse. Sure. Some government departments, they are claiming more. And I think one is compounded by, as you pointed out, the vacancy rate. There's a moratorium on hiring, and perhaps that could actually be worse as we continue. Vacancy rate in some instances at around 60%, and what is interesting is that those people, they don't choose in terms of the shift that they do. They are actually compelled in some instances to actually do extra shifts because there isn't enough officials to do that particular work. And that creates that culture of dependency on overtime. There's one story in the Eastern Cape, the traffic department. They actually need about 900 traffic officers, and they've got over 400 traffic officers, that's level 4, that are currently on the road. And because of that, they have challenges in terms of implementing a 24/7 service in terms of enforcement of traffic on the road. They have to implement what is called 24/2. That means that they start doing a 24-hour shift from Thursday until Sunday, because there's just not enough traffic officers on the road to man traffic, because there isn't. And they are forced to do a lot of overtime as a result.
And you think about a situation like that, once you now have the 900 required, those who are relying on this particular income are not likely to take that easy, because they're so used to getting this kind of money, and it has become somewhat of a supplementary for some of their pay.
In fact, it's interesting, based on the same issue. You have KZN, I'm talking about traffic police, KZN and Limpopo. They have the highest number of traffic officers. I think they've got about 1,500 somewhere there. But they still have high claim of overtime. And one would think that when you have a full complement of workforce, then you'll reduce the number of overtime. But you still carrying that burden of more claims coming through. I think in total you have about 1.5 billion in terms of claims in the traffic department for overtime, and that's out of about a 9 billion rand salary bill that they are paying out. It's about 15%. So the number is very, very high. But also, there's human nature. People find creative ways to claim for that overtime because they need it. Things are expensive, and it becomes part of their budgets and lifestyle.
And I wonder then, are there efforts to regulate some of that, overtime hours paying off? Are they working at all?
Well, currently in most government departments, they would say that you cannot work a certain number of hours a month. But that doesn't work. In some instances, they would say you cannot claim more than 30% of your gross monthly income or salary. But that doesn't work, because if you just don't have enough people to do the job, what are you going to do? And then it doesn't work. And they say, if it's over that, it must be approved. And it's like every job and overtime is being approved, because if you don't approve them, then service will suffer.
So what are the plans to resolve the sticking point? Because, I mean, it is a sticking point. You think about the fact that government departments will say, but work must be done, because if work is not done, we also get into trouble. But at the same time, we really need to monitor this particular bill. So how then do they begin to
I think
resolve
we
this
need a
impasse?
little bit more transparency first, in terms of, maybe the finance minister, when he presents his budget, we need to get a clear picture of how much is being paid in overtime. Where are the areas? For what? Did the people do the job? I mean, we're told that some people who are not supposed to claim this overtime are also claiming it. Those who are in higher positions who are not supposed to, but they find ways to claim. So I think once there is more transparency, perhaps the Public Service Commission do a lot of work around that. And then there could be ways to try to address this issue.
Quite an interesting subject you've been looking at, Tshepo, and I'm sure some public servants tonight are not very happy with you, but let's see what happens with this one, because as you say, it's staggering figures. I mean, it's something you take lightly, but it really is costing, the fiscus quite a lot more, but we'll continue to monitor this one. It's an interesting and a very important discussion to be able to have, especially when you look at the issue of overtime pay. That was our economics editor, Tshepo Mongoai.